Hello, welcome to Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Clarisse Fortuné. Coming up in a program. In a DRC, a political comeback that comes as a surprise. A former prime minister under Joseph Kabila returns to the spotlight after 13 years, joining a reshuffled government that now includes opposition figures. A court battle over the final resting place of Zambia's former president, more than 2 months after his death. Edgar Lungu's family has lost the fight to bury him in South Africa. And only 2% of the genetic information in global cancer research come from Africa. And that's costing lives. We'll go to Ghana, where a groundbreaking project is working to change the picture. We begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where cabinet reshuffle has brought opposition figures into government, a move the president had planned for months to signal national unity. The headline surprise, the return of Adolphe Muzito, former prime minister under Joseph Kabila, now appointed deputy prime minister for the budget. It marks his comeback to politics after 13 years away. Emmett Livingston reports from Kinshasa.
Late on Thursday night, the presidency of the Democratic Republic of Congo announced a new government. It's the 6th government since President Félix Tshisekedi took office in 2019. Prime Minister Judith Suminwa will stay in her position. She is one of 17 women in the new government of 53 ministers. But what's truly different this time is the inclusion of opposition politicians. Adolphe Muzito, who unsuccessfully ran for president in 2023, has been appointed as the budget minister, for example. He was a former prime minister under the previous president, who has since grown closer to Tshisekedi. And Floribert Anzaluni has been named as a regional integration minister. Anzaluni is a co-founder of the civil society movement Filimbi. He also ran for president in 2023 in an election that Tshisekedi ended up winning. At the time, Anzaluni was among a group of opposition politicians who called that election fraudulent. Other politicians from opposition parties have also been included in the new government. Tshisekedi began calling for a so-called unity government back in February after M23 rebels and Rwandan troops captured swathes of eastern Congo, including its 2 largest cities. This reshuffle is meant to project national unity at a time when parts of the country are occupied. But the most important ministers have maintained their positions, and none of the largest opposition parties are in the new government. Some have criticised the so-called unity government as a way for Tshisekedi to maintain his hold on power.
A South African court has ruled that the former Zambian president Edgar Lungu must be returned to Lusaka for a state funeral. The decision is a blow to his family, who had wanted him laid to rest in South Africa in a private ceremony. The legal dispute with the Zambian government began in June after Lungu died while receiving medical treatment. Clémence Vallet has more.
It's a decision that comes as a blow to the family of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu. On Friday, a South African court ruled in favor of Lusaka's request to repatriate his body, putting an end to 2 months of legal dispute.
It is ordered that the applicant is entitled to repatriate the body of the late President Edgar Lungu, the late President Lungu, for a state funeral and burial.
The former head of state passed away in South Africa on June 5th while receiving medical treatment. The 68-year-old's family wanted to bury him in Johannesburg 20 days later in a private ceremony. Plans which were halted just hours before the funeral was due to start after Lusaka approached the South African courts, arguing he should be buried in his homeland with state honours.
A state funeral is a matter of public interest, such that even if a late president had expressed a desire not to be given state funeral, such a wish must be overridden by public interest.
The legal dispute over Lungu's final resting place highlights the animosity between the former head of state and the current president, Hakainde Hichilema. Lungu's family said he did not want his long-standing political rival and successor at his funeral. The conflict between the 2 men led to Hichilema's imprisonment in 2017 during Lungu's presidency, and last year Lungu accused Hichilema's government of harassing him through law enforcement and restricting his movements. His family also said the government had initially prevented him from traveling to South Africa for treatment, a charge which the government has denied.
Relations between France and Algeria have reached a new law in the wake of a letter written by Emmanuel Macron to his prime minister. In it, he instructs François Bayrou to get tougher with France's former colony as a spat over 2 French nationals imprisoned in Algeria and visa exemptions for Algerian diplomats drags on. Algiers has responded, accusing Paris of seeking to exonerate itself from any blame. Catherine Viet has more.
The response was swift. A day after Emmanuel Macron's call to take a tougher stance with Algeria, Algiers issued a sharply worded 3-page statement.
Since the outbreak of this crisis, provoked by France, the latter has chosen to use force and escalation. It has resorted to threats, ultimatums, and summons, ignoring the fact that Algeria will not yield to any form of pressure.
Macron angered Algiers last July when France backed Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara. Since then, relations have rapidly soured. The root of the latest tensions, a letter by Macron addressed to his prime minister.
In this letter, I share my particular concern about the situation of the most dangerous Algerian nationals who are being released from prison and can no longer be deported. I ask you to instruct the Minister of the Interior to find ways of cooperating effectively with his Algerian counterpart as soon as possible.
Macron refers to several cases, including a deadly knife attack this February in Mulhouse, carried out by an Algerian national who France has long attempted to expel, but Algiers repeatedly refused to accept. France can extend foreign inmates detention for legal reasons, and it can't deport them. The Prime Minister, though, is taking a more conciliatory tone.
We will apply them not in the spirit of perpetual confrontation, but in the spirit of one day restoring balanced and fair relations.
The arrest and sentencing of Franco-Algerian writer Boualem Sansal and journalist Christophe Glees remains a major bone of contention. While France's Interior Minister continues to advocate a hard line, drawing the wrath of Algiers, which holds him responsible for the deteriorating relations between the two countries.
And in other news, in brief, Chad's opposition leader could face 25 years in prison. Ex-Prime Minister Succès Masra is on trial, accused of inciting hatred in connection with deadly clashes. The prosecution also requested the same sentence for 58 co-defendants, along with a total fine of 5 billion CFA francs and the freezing of their assets. However, 9 other defendants could be acquitted due to lack of evidence. And in Uganda, a judge has refused to grant bail to opposition leader Kizza Besigye, who had spent nearly 9 months in jail on treason charges. The ruling has sparked criticism from rights groups and opposition figures, including Bobi Wine, amid growing concerns over pre-election crackdown. President Yoweri Museveni, in power since 1986, is seeking re-election next year. The United States has announced it will pause all routine visa applications for citizens of Zimbabwe starting this Friday. The latest travel restriction targeting African countries. The move comes just days after Washington introduced a pilot program requiring visitors from Malawi and Zambia to pay visa bonds of up to $15,000, refundable only if they leave on time. U.S. officials say the measures are aimed at preventing overstays and improving travel documentation. And staying in Zimbabwe, the platinum sector is facing mounting pressure as miners say they are owed millions in unpaid export earnings. Under government policy, 30% of foreign currency from exports must be converted into local currency, but delays in those payments are hitting producers hard. Sharon Mazin-Gezo has more.
Government's foreign currency retention policy requires that exporters retain only 70% of their foreign currency earnings, with the remaining balance, 30%, surrendered to the central bank in exchange of the local currency ZiG. But since January, platinum miners haven't received their corresponding payments in the local currency ZiG, and this is hurting the mining operations.
We are not sure when the government is going to pay that. Maybe they're going to do it in tranches over time. But as long as the situation remains stable, I think the impact will be manageable. But if things unravel in terms of inflation, that means there will be a massive loss of value, which will very significantly but adversely affect the viability of businesses.
Zimbabwe has the world's third largest platinum reserves after Russia and South Africa. Platinum miners in Zimbabwe exported 690 million worth of platinum in the first half of 2025, but the payment delays and the government's foreign currency retention policy is hurting the platinum sector and causing major financial losses.
Now, just about 2% of the genomes, that's the genetic information that are used in global cancer research, come from Africa, a glaring gap that leaves many treatments less effective for people of African descent. Yet, the continent records more than 700,000 cancer deaths each year. In Accra, a biotech company is working to change that, building Africa's first genetic database, drawing on data from thousands of patients across several countries. Julia Guggenheim and Damien Kofi have this report.
In this Accra hospital, Dr. Tagbo treats many of the 200 Ghanaian children diagnosed with cancer each year.
So you got some blood yesterday, did you not? Yes. Yeah.
Ghana's 5-year survival rate for children with cancer is around 30%, 3 times lower than in Europe. Diagnoses are often delayed and access to treatment is difficult. And a lack of clinical trials has hindered progress.
Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of that going on right now in sub-Saharan Africa to help us know, number one, what is even the genetic landscape of our cancers within the sub-region, what treatment protocols will work better for our children within the sub-regions.
Only 3% of genetic data collected by researchers around the world come from African patients, while 80% comes from Caucasians. Yao Bediako and his team are trying to close this gap.
I think today we have samples from liver cancer patients.
With its African Cancer Atlas project, this biotech company has already collected DNA samples from 2,000 cancer patients from 9 African countries. The samples are stored in these refrigerators.
The African Cancer Atlas project is born out of the recognition that there is very little genomic data for cancers for African people. It hurts people all over the world because as a human race, our species evolved from the African continent. So if we have more diverse data from Africa, it actually benefits people all over the world.
Once collected, the genetic data is sequenced in this laboratory so that it can be interpreted.
With this particular sample, we are hoping to find out genetic mutations, and hopefully that will help us to discover targets for therapies for this patient.
UMACHI aims to collect 15,000 DNA samples, corresponding to over 7,000 patients across the continent. Hope for the 700,000 Africans who die of cancer every year.
And a quick word of sports, as we've been watching closely the African Nations Championship. In match day 2 of Group C, Algeria and South Africa played out a 1-1 draw. Uganda took on Guinea, and it's a clear win for the Cranes, 3-0. And finally, another journey we have been following. Life-sized wooden giraffes, lions and other animals have just completed an extraordinary 20,000-kilometer journey from Congo to Norway, a theatrical migration to highlight the toll of climate change. In their final stretch, the puppets climbed Europe's largest glacier before reaching North Cape, one of the northernmost points on Earth. The 4-month odyssey, part of a climate awareness project called The Herds, brought art, spectacle, and a powerful message to 25 cities along the way. And this concludes our program. Thank you for watching Eye on Africa on France 24.
it would not be France without a summer break. Now, before we dive into a new season, here's just a sample of what 2025 has served up so far.
Gaza can and should be the jewel of the Palestinian people.
Ukraine is expendable in the eyes of the United States.
Question today is how do we live together in a warmed planet and an aging population?
Have you seen America change forever, Andrew Weissman?
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, I don't think you can put the genie back in the bottle.
What we are really seeing, actually, is the victory of Chinese policy.
Did the French state cover up for Nestle?
It appears to be so, yeah.
We have a new pope.
Russia,
Greenland, US,
Syria,
France,
Ukraine,
Germany, Iran, Israel, Palestine, Korea,
Poland,
India, Vietnam,
Canada.
New shows start August 25th here on France 24.